We are probably going to encounter a bit of a vibe shift from last weekend. Adam, how are you?
Yeah, just a slight change. Just a slight change in fortunes. I don't know if people read that Hertzler supposedly set fire to the forest fires in some ways, and set fire to the tactics at the training ground with a lighter, and used some better ones against Chelsea, which was nice. I don't know if this effigy burning was useful in a spiritual sense, but it certainly seemed to do something, because that was a hell of a performance, especially in the second half. Like tight, like the opposite of what we did at Forest.
Yeah, it really was. And yeah, it is quite funny reading about that. So Hertzler Monday morning burnt his old tactics sheets from Forest and was basically, that's the end of it. We're not talking about it again. And very interesting reading some of the articles that came out. Apparently he had some very heartfelt conversations with some of the senior teammates. Veltman was amongst them. He spoke to, I think it was Andy Naylor who posted that one of those articles about it. And
the one and only.
Yeah, the guy who gets access to the training ground, right? Like, so he, I guess he had a really frank conversation with Hertzler, and probably a lot of the older team members did, given they're older than him. It's always good to get that kind of input. And yeah, like you say, it obviously worked out. It's interesting that he noted that there was possibly an acceptance that they weren't giving it everything in training, which is interesting. Like, that is kind of worrying. But clearly, if they give it all, or give more than they were, we can get more performances like yesterday. So, I mean, I guess we'll take it as we go. Do you want to cover the transfer window closing first, before we get to that, as that kind of chronologically happened at the beginning of last week?
Yeah, I mean, we should also probably talk about the fact that we sort of signed and unsigned a player, right?
Yes, we did. We did all sorts with that one. It feels very Pritchard-esque, doesn't it, from back in the day, where he kind of was coming down from Huddersfield and did a UE on the M25.
Yeah, I mean, instead of Huddersfield, this is slightly more continental feel to it. And what I can't even remember the name of this kid. What's his name?
No, I don't remember his name either. I just know he was from Brøndby.
Yeah. And then obviously no one had heard of this kid, right? And then we got told that we were signing him in the summer.
Yeah.
And everyone then decided he was the next best thing and was sort of a Valentin Barco regen, which is funny saying that about someone who's like, what, 19 or 20. And seemingly it said it was all done. Then he came to England and it's off. So I don't know whether it was he didn't like what he saw, or the rumors being that there was a sort of couldn't come to an agreement from a contract standpoint, which is fairly bizarre considering we're talking about a very young player. I'm desperately trying to say words while finding the name of the guy, but I can't do it. So I'm just going to have to stop talking.
I can only assume that there were probably some things that he was told by his agent that would be happening when they got there, and he came
7-0 against Forest.
Yeah, he probably came over on the understanding that he was going to get the contract he was told he was going to get by his agent, and then when he got there, like, the agent kind of probably tried to ambush the club, maybe, of like, oh yeah, like, this is what we're doing now, right? They're like, nope. That's it. Like, when it comes to contractual stuff, like, that's the only thing I can assume, right? They're not gonna fly the guy over and do all this for a young prospect signing, no less, and not have things hashed out before they get on the plane, right? Like, surely they're not just gonna be like, yeah, we'll chat when you get here. Like, we'll see how it feel it out.
Well, this is what's weird, because in the stuff I've written, this is Clement Bischoff. I don't know if it's Bischoff or Biscoff. It's a cookie, Bischoff, isn't it? The Biscoff. They're quite good. Yeah, have you had those?
Bischoff. I have. I'm not that big of a fan of them. The missus
you don't like them?
Biscoff. No.
They do. They also do like a paste of it too. So if that doesn't sound like too like I don't know, post-apocalyptic, they paste it. So it's sort of like the consistency of peanut butter, and it's really sweet, and you can mix it with like yogurt or whatever, and it kind of makes this sort of cheesecakey vibe. It's very good. But anyway, that's not the player. Bischoff.
On April Fools, I hope the team replaced the marathon paste at half time with Biscoff paste. And
yeah, they could. They could. Well, we've got more chance of having Biscoff than Bischoff, it seems like. But yeah, so Danish guy was meant to be signed for about 7 million quid, 19. Supposedly, the line by the journalist on The Athletic is the transfer's now collapsed after the two clubs could not agree a deal to complete the transfer. So some outlets are saying it's a transfer-based issue between the clubs. Others are saying it's a contract-based issue. You got to imagine it's one of those ones where the clubs sort of had a handshake deal on it, and then maybe they came back and were like, we want XYZ sell-on clause, and it just all, who knows? But anyway, he's not coming. Maybe they'll pick it up in the summer. It feels very Brighton-y to come and pick it up in the summer. Didn't we do that in CISO, where it didn't happen, and we came back and fixed it?
Yes, we did. And it feels like, I mean, Brentford have had these struggles, right? Their hunting ground is this Scandinavian outlook, right? Like, whereas Az has recently been in South America, Brentford obviously using a very similar model have been all over that Scandinavian region, and I feel like they occasionally run into situations like this as well. So maybe the South American agents and the Norwegian, Swedish agents are all just on the blower to each other and like seeing how much they can scam Premier League clubs out of like random add-ons. Because it feels that way for sure. We did actually make a sign-in for January though, and I said when we talked about do we think we'll do any movement in the window, I was sure that we would make a just signing in January for the summer, because it feels like a proper Albion hallmark at this point. And we did it again. Stefanos Tsimas, I don't know how you say that second name, but he is from FC Nuremberg for undisclosed terms. He will run till June 2030. Will remain on loan, of course, at Nuremberg for the rest of the season. He is only a baby as well. He's only young. He's made. He played for PAOK through Greece for quite a long time.
Is it Panathinaikos?
No,
is that different? A PAOK and Panathinaikos, two different things.
Yeah, that's why
that's confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, PAOK. I don't know what their actual pronunciation is.
Thessalonian Athletic Club of Constantinopolitans. Okay.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. No wonder they shortened that. Christ.
That's a Grammy for Adam right there. Just
that
one.
Pan-Thessalonian Athletic Club of Constantinopolitans.
But they play in black and white, I believe, which is how I always remember them being different to Panathinaikos, because they play
the green Panathinaikos, aren't they? Yeah. All right. Anyway, so it doesn't play for Panathinaikos. Okay.
No, it doesn't play for PAOK either. He left them for Nuremberg. But he is only 19. Big boy striker. Very reminiscent. If you go on to Smarter Scout and use some free credits, Evan Ferguson pops up as one of the most similar strikers.
Let's try again
to the Greek lads. So we shall see what happens there. He's here to join us in the summer. And of course, Evan Ferguson went out on loan to West Ham United at the end of the window as well. Not great, but I'm kind of hoping it may lead to Ruta playing number 9 more often, because again, after last night, he is a player that is fast becoming a very, very clinical fox in the box type, and I don't know why he thinks he isn't. And likewise for Hertzler. Other than that, we had an absolute myriad of youth lads going out on loan as well. We had, let me list them all off here because we had an absolute bunch of them. We had Tom McGill recalled from MK Dons due to Rushworth being cup-tied, Steely being hurt, and obviously Verbruggen basically being our only senior keeper.
Well, he's playing so well, you don't need a backup to Verbruggen.
Casper Nielsen was released. Eiffel joins Bromley. Ed Turns made a couple of appearances for the Albion, moved to Exeter City. Caelan Vickers has moved to Mansfield Town. Rory McConville, who came on against Norwich and looked pretty good. Well, they liked what they saw because he signed for Norwich permanently. Benicio Baker Buati has joined Millwall permanently, another one of De Zerbi's favourites when he was here. Brought him on quite a few times as a baby. And obviously Barco going to Strasbourg as well. bit of a clearing out, isn't it? Bit of an absolute pillaging of the under-21s. I don't know if you saw their lineup like 2 days later, but it looked really sad. But that's just kind of the way it goes, isn't it, these days? The Albion are not what they were in League One and the Championship, and the standards have risen dramatically. And sadly, we'll see a lot of these boys go out elsewhere, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think the McConville one was, I think he only had 6 months on his contract. It's something like that, right? So they wanted to just get something for him because it sounds like probably was gonna head out anyway. As you say, this is not your granddad's team anymore. This is a club that has spent the most money in the last 12 months in football, is my understanding. At least in European football. I don't know about the Saudi stuff because they're probably buying a couple random hotels or whatever. And I know Chelsea are fans of selling hotels and that, but there's probably some weird dealings going on over there. But anyway, we spent a crap ton of money is the point. So the idea that players that you've spent the last 7-8 years bringing up in a youth system before the club became this are still going to fit into this new paradigm that the club is in is, it's not going to happen. There'll be a couple that work out really well, but frankly, now you're looking for better talent, with all due respect to those players. So if we do see some of the youth players coming through our system from now onwards, though, I would say there's enough there to probably warrant getting fairly excited, because if they've got through that gauntlet, then they're being kept around for a reason.
Yeah, Josh Duppus, I think, is one of the ones that's standing out at the minute, and we've kept him on. Obviously, one to keep an eye on. I think that De Zerbi quite liked him too as a backup to a backup with all of our injuries last season. But he's been absolutely killing it.
I like De Zerbi's judgment, by the way. Well, in many ways, I think that's proven out.
Oh yeah, because all of them are gone. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, you've just highlighted a few, and you've mentioned De Zerbi there. But we talked about some of his signings before, maybe last week, about who he wanted. He didn't like playing Carlos Baleba.
No, he did not.
He did everything he could to not play Carlos Baleba. Maybe De
Zerbi. Similar to Potter, right? He was the same way about Alexis and Moises. He did not want to play either of them, ideally. Like, he was not a fan on playing either of them. And he was kind of forced into it towards the end of that season prior to him leaving. And he was like, oh, shit. I think I've got 2 world-class midfielders in a double pivot here, and I might do quite well.
Yeah, who knows? There's too much conversation about De Zerbi as is, so I'll stop. But
yeah. I mean, obviously, the one last thing to talk about is Derby cashing in on cash in. How do you pronounce his first name? Any idea?
I don't care enough. Aaron?
No. Aaron, I'm not sure. But we've signed him from Derby, 23-year-old centre-half. Most Derby fans absolutely gutted to see him go on social media, fuming, to be polite about it. Made a lot of appearances for them this season. General sentiment from Derby fans is that he's very calm, very composed, very good on the ball, very good in the air, strong defender, very slow. Not the fastest, which is kind of frustrating because that's one of the pieces that we're really missing, bit of speed. But we have to hope that is solved in the summer. How did you feel post-transfer window with the moves that we made in the end? Are you excited to see what this Greek striker brings? Are you intrigued to see what happens with Fergie on loan at West Ham? Nothing, obviously, so far for him. How do you feel about it now that we've closed the window and probably more important than anything else, Karim Mitoma is still a Brighton player?
Yeah, I mean, you can't. That's the biggest piece. But I mean, if you want to look at it from a harsh critique standpoint, which is one of my favorite things to do, you could argue that we're currently weaker than we were before the January transfer window started, right? And Enciso gone, Ferguson gone. Who else did we lose? It was another. Well, I guess McConville was playing a little bit, gone, and you brought in a championship defender, and a chap from the MLS. But if we spin that around, we talked about how we desperately need a centre back, and we succeeded in doing that. We got another body in to play centre back. which Lewis Dunk just went down yesterday. So that's going to be fairly important. And despite the fact that I think we were all quite confused as to where all these number 8 midfielders are going to play, we'll get onto this when we discuss more about the game against Chelsea. But tell you what, Diego Gomez looks tidy.
Doesn't he just?
Looks tidy. So I'm feeling good about that. The other piece is if you again put the rose tinted glasses on, could this move be good for Evan Ferguson? I'll be honest with you. Hand on heart, I don't think Evan Ferguson plays a game in a Brighton shirt again. That's my gut feel. I think he's going out on the fact that solid rumors, not just BS Daily Mail rumors, but solid rumors from justifiable sources, reputable sources came out and said Brighton were open to a permanent deal for Evan Ferguson in January. Tells me everything. So he's going to go out to West Ham. They're going to hope he puts himself in the shop window and looks decent, pops in a couple of goals, adds his value back in as clubs become more confident in the fact that this guy still has upside and was just had injuries and was in a poor run of form, and they'll be able to sell him on now for a decent amount, as opposed to selling low, which is what they would have had to have done and felt very unbloom-like. There was talk about someone was talking about Levy and Paul Barber, which is hence my confusion. So I don't know if Seamas is half the player of what Ferguson looked like when he had 1 week of really impressive football. Not to be too harsh on the lad, but that would be incredible. What I've read, people are quite excited about this kid, and he's been looking fairly good. He also seemed to look fairly good at a Greek youth level, if I just base it off on the stats. But did you mention there's 10 goals in 17 appearances for Nuremberg?
No, but you just have. So
there we go. That's good, isn't
Good
it? And you have to imagine that he started playing for Nuremberg in the 24-25 season, right? So just this season. So I don't even think Hutzler would have had first, a proper look at him when he was managing in the Bundesliga too. So I'm guessing this is from the classic scouting system that we have, as opposed to a Hutzler signing. But another body up front. I know you just talked about Ruta and number 9 being up top, but look, I don't want Ruta or João Pedro and number 9. I've seen enough of it to not really want to see any more of it.
Fair.
For me, Welbeck makes the whole thing click. He makes everyone around him better, as cliche as it is to say that. He creates the space for some of the other players. He's able to bring in the play from the 10 and focus play as needed to those individuals. Without Welbeck, this side looks so different. And you got no replacement for him. Now Evan Ferguson is currently at West Ham and probably never plays another game. So I'm hoping this Greek kid is worth it. That's a 20-minute answer to the transfer window is probably good.
It's quite funny, actually. Nuremberg won 4-3 yesterday. And Seamas
they rallied, did they?
Never mind. They played yesterday. They won 4-3 away from home against Magdeburg. And he did not get the greatest rating in the world. But the guys behind him all got great ratings. So if you're looking at a guy who makes everything click, it looks like he's just performed that exact job yesterday in order to drag them back from the brink. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Miroslav Klose is in charge of Nuremberg. Did you know that?
Oh, no, but I like that fact.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's get to the game itself. At home, at the Amex, under the lights, 6,000 Chelsea fans. Not the best attendance in the world because the timing is absolutely just not great for any fan. 8 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, right before we play them at 8 o'clock on a Friday. So the league loves this fixture. Thoughts on the lineup? Verbruggen, Lamptey at left back, Dunk, Van Heck, Veltman, Baleba and Hinshelwood in the midfield, Minte, Mitoma, Ruta, and Welbeck. No arguments in terms of strength, right? Like it's basically as strong as it gets, and the bench was very strong as well. For Chelsea, Sanchez, Cucurella, Chalobah, Adarabio, Bayo, Gusto, Caicedo, Dewsbury Hall, Sancho, Palmer, Neto, and Kunku up top. So not the strongest, right? You'd obviously have Enzo in there, Colwill probably in there as well. Nicholas Jackson's hurt, so he's not going to be able to play regardless, so it just doesn't matter. But obviously two very strong sides, very much respected the opposition, right? It wasn't one of those ones where they kind of have a sneaky chat on the side and both play their B teams. Like, this was strong football sides put up against each other. How were you feeling prior to minute 4 and the lineup that we'd rolled out?
Yeah, I think you couldn't really argue with much of it. There's some PTSD of seeing Lamptey's name pop up at left back again, isn't there? There's no way it couldn't, because again, I think it was one of the worst performances I've seen in a Brighton shirt in quite a while against Forest. So the fact that Herzl was just like, you know what, lad, off you go again. Let's see what happens this time around. And the funny part was, he was excellent.
He won man of the match.
Yes, just I don't know. I don't understand football. It's not great for someone that does a football podcast. So I think it was good that you talking about the bench is intriguing. And I've said this 1,000 times, so I'm going to get 1,001. Outside of McGill on the bench, you had Webster, Gruder, João Pedro, Adingra, Cashin, Gomez, Ayari, O'Reilly. Every single one of those players you could argue is competing, bar Webster, competing for a starting 11 position, right?
Ironically, he's probably just about to get thrust into the starting 11 without a choice.
And he is. And by the way, also good yesterday. Let's give credit to Webster. Every time we've seen him the last few games, he's been good. This is a squad where you still do not have Igor Julio out long term, James Milner old, Ferdy Kadioglu out, Solly March, not quite sure what's happened to Solly March, back out again. Mats Weaver, who seems to be close to coming back. That's 5 players who expect to be in the matchday squad.
Talk about a brutal first season for a new signing, by the way. Like, Mats Weaver, I know that people wanted him to never play for Brighton again after the Wolves game, but oh my goodness, like, it's just been brutal for like any player. Like, you've got to feel for anyone who's had the start of the first. It's almost going to feel like his first real season next year for himself. I feel like that's the mentality he's got to have, right? Like, this whole season's just been bad luck after bad luck for him.
Yeah, it's been pretty sad for him. And also his last couple of appearances out, though, he's been good.
Next to Baleba, those two looked like they were starting to put something together.
Right. I think, am I correct here? He obviously got the goal. I missed it, getting a beer, but he scored against West Ham and then got an assist against Leicester.
Yep. He went down against West Ham, and that was really, I think, looking back at our podcast, I think we all pretty much concluded that was losing Weaver that day was a big reason of why we conceded, because it was only minutes after he went off and we were reshuffling that they hit us, where Van Heck moved up to cover where Weaver should have been, and it ended up in an equaliser. So hopefully he can have a bit of a bounce back again, and we see why we signed him, because that is an area of the pitch that obviously we're in desperate need of reinforcements in terms of that combative midfielder. We have lots of the tidy ones, but not so many of the beastly ones like Baleba. 4 minutes into the football game, Cole Palmer, who absolutely loves playing against Brighton and Hove Albion for 90 minutes at Stamford Bridge and for 5 minutes at the Amex, puts in a totally aimless ball, just comes over, loops over to the back post, kind of hits it back across goal, ends up skewing it a little bit by kind of accident, goes further towards being on target than anything else. And Bart Verbruggen inexplicably scoops it into his own net. 1-0 Chelsea, 4.5 minutes on the clock. A team at home that have just lost 7-0. A goalkeeper that is 22 years old, that has never made a mistake like that, right? Like, we talked about his passing, like, every now and again, a Forest swell, like, absolute disaster pass for like their 7th or whatever the hilarious goal it was. But he's never been a shot stopper that does something like that. So he concedes 4 minutes in after a 7-0 defeat in front of the North Stand with an absolute howler that he's never done before in an Albion shirt, at least. What are your vibes going into that moment? How are you feeling? Because for me, it was like, my head was in I thought, like, oh boy, like, here we go. This is gonna get ugly.
Yeah, not great. It wasn't a particularly nice portent to have of what the rest of the game was going to look like. I mean, it's a howler, isn't it? And the fact is, he was. I know we didn't really talk about this because it was so stupid at that point, but he was obviously massively at fault for the 7th goal against Forest. Just passed it out, didn't he? So his last 2 contributions in goals were to basically just give a free goal to the opposition team. And I think I said this yesterday, but it's even worse than the stat that I think I presented. Was at this moment in time, right, 5 minutes into this game after a 7-0 defeat, you're sat there and you have conceded 9 goals without scoring. You've conceded 9 goals. One there, 7 Forest, 1 Everton. You've not scored against against anyone since Manchester United. And in that process, you have got 1 official own goal in Lewis Dunk. But for me, that's an own goal. What Verbruggen just did. I know.
Absolutely.
Right. It's technicality wise, they're like, it's on target. It was an own goal. So there's 2 own goals and a pass out to an opposition attacker, which gave them a goal. So it's, for all intents and purposes, 3 absolutely heinous mistakes, 9 goals conceded before you last scored. Not a great look, is it, for building confidence?
No. I mean, a reaction was vital, wasn't it? You needed to see something. You needed to see something fast. You couldn't have this team go about their usual business, right? You had to see something immediately. And for the next 9 minutes, 8 minutes, we had 68% possession and 97% pass success rate, which ended up with Jorginho Ruta rising up in the middle of the box like a number 9, funnily enough, from an absolute belting Veltman cross, which is becoming a bit of a habit now as well, to put us immediately back level on 12 minutes. Big sigh of relief, wasn't it? Because that was not only a fantastic reaction for the next 7-8 minutes where we actually looked like we wanted to score a goal, not just dicking around like we did at Forest, but we actually then went ahead and did it quickly. In 8 minutes, we responded very quickly. And that's really, like, I mean, that's the point of the title of this podcast episode, right? Bouncebackability. We needed to show some of that, and it really roused the entire Amex, didn't it?
Yeah, if this didn't happen, it's very easy to say this, right? But if that goal didn't happen, I think it could have been very ugly. I think it could have got very ugly. Heads dropping, frustrated, that side of the, sort of an Everton again. We've critiqued Hertzler, and this fan base has critiqued Hertzler no end, especially in the last week. But that mentality shown after that howler to come back in the situation that we've just described and then score and then go on to ultimately win this game is credit to the manager getting the players in the right headspace to have the mental fortitude to come back and make that work. Very easily, this team could have put their heads down and slumped after that opening goal. Very easily. Excellent pass, excellent cross from Joel Veltman. Reminds me of one he did a few weeks ago. Similar sort of outcome.
Norwich, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. And
to Ruta, I think
it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because he scored twice in that game, didn't he?
He did.
And excellent header, like really strikery header, as you say, like a real number 9 header. Nice direction on it into the bottom corner. Weirdly, wasn't a Robert Sanchez mistake. And yeah, back in it properly. And as you say, so needed.
The rest of the half, however, not the best. A couple of yellow cards for Ruta and Veltman, likewise for Dewsbury Hall. Lewis Dunk goes down. Looked like an impact injury on his side, almost his ribs. I'm not sure if he maybe he's cracked a rib or something, because playing on with that is not really something you can do from everyone I've heard. A cracked rib is no joke. So hopefully it's something like that, because it's a lot easier to come back from than like a muscular one, right? But he comes off at halftime. Webster comes on. The Chelsea team dominated possession in that. Well, not even dominated. They had 54% possession for the rest of the half. And they had a total of 3 shots, 1 on target. We only had the 1 shot that led to the goal. Both of their shots were from Cole Palmer. The second one was from really far out, wasn't it? Quite a good save from Bart, but it was straight at him. And other than that,
well,
they really didn't offer anything, did they?
There was one moment where they should have scored. It was on 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I think the ball came to, I think, Caicedo, and you just had 2 runners. Who is that? I don't know, Neto maybe. The ball just came straight through the middle, over the top, reminding us of the Stamford Bridge game where they just kept doing that. You've got Van Hecker and Dunk who are quite pushed up, and the player just runs through the middle of both of them. And I don't know why he doesn't shoot. He's basically one-on-one with Lewis Dunk approaching him. The ball's bouncing, so it's a little bit dodgy. And he instead tries to pop it over to Cole Palmer, who makes a mess of it, just heads over the bar. They really should have got back in the lead there. It wasn't. It was Nkunku that was through. Nkunku.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was their main thing. But according to the stats, you're right. Like, technically, I don't think they were given the credit of any big chances, quote unquote, in the game.
No, and I mean, thinking back on it, there wasn't any, right? Like,
it was dull the first half.
It was very poor. It was very poor. Webster comes on at halftime. Obviously, bit of worry there, given that we are playing a team that could come out and, obviously their reliance on Cole Palmer is massive. They needed a performance from him.
And it was him against Chelsea last time, wasn't it, Webster, who made a couple of really shocking mistakes.
Yeah, it was. So we really need a response from him, especially if it's going to be something that is a long-term issue now, right? Like, we don't know what the hell's going to be going on there. So hopefully, we'll see him come back. But if not, we need to be able to rely on Webster or Cashin, as depending on what's going on. But coming into the second half, decent start for the Albion that then led to a goal, an assist from Ruta this time, in a bit of really nice, tidy piece of play. What did you make of the idea of a handball? Because per the letter of the law, it wouldn't have even been ruled out by VAR. But one does wonder if VAR would have ruled it out anyway, because they're useless. Do you get what I mean? Like, even though...
Yeah.
So for me, it was quite funny. The ball comes out. Tariq hits it hard. Hits a Chelsea defender right into his own arm. Totally
Caicedo.
Unintentional. Is it Caicedo?
Mm-hmm.
Of course it is, because that's what led to him being on the floor when the ball went in. And then it's attempted to be cleared twice by Chelsea players. And that's the key part there that covers the issue with the Lamptey handball. There's 2 more phases of play, so to speak, of them trying to clear the ball. But it ends up at Ruta's feet, who pops it over to Mitoma. Do you think he handballed it to take control? It certainly didn't look like it to me, but nobody really gave too much of a... There was no real super close-ups of it. And I think because there is no VAR, they didn't waste too much time on it.
I'm watching it again right now, and I think it hits the underside of his armpit, weirdly, just in the connection between where the side of your chest is and the sort of armpit. I think that's where it hits. The ball hit Tariq Lamptey's hand, so yes, traditionally that is a handball. But as you say, VAR wouldn't have interrupted based on what you described, because there was another succession of play or whatever it was. It's handball, but I don't care. What I do want to talk about is
the unbelievable
Mitoma.
Finish.
Yeah, because this is why you want to keep the Magic Man and you don't flog him off to Saudi. And this is why he is such an important player for this team. There's not many guys that can do that. There's not many people that can take that, because the ball from Ruta, it's good vision from Ruta, by the way, good vision, but it's a bit of an awkward ball. He like punts it a bit, it just pops it through.
Yeah, awkward angle, isn't it? Like he just kind
Awkward.
of wings it.
But the body movement from Matoma to just make that happen is obscene. And then not only does he do that, but he then like hits it on the part of his foot, which is pretty much the only position where he can put that ball perfectly over Sanchez and also out of the reach of Cucurella running back. It's world class. It's world class. It really is. And that's the difference in these games. That is the difference. That is a guy that can do something beyond the ordinary that causes you to get through to the next round of the FA Cup. I mean, he's an incredible player. We haven't seen it all the time this season, but when he does it, it's magic.
Likes to score in the FA Cup, doesn't he? That banger against Liverpool as well.
Yeah,
he's a good. I mean, that's exactly why I said at the beginning, keeping hold of him was so important, because that's what you hope.
Dingra doesn't do that.
Is there any winger that we have that does that? I don't think so. How many wingers in the Premier League do that? Salah?
Wow.
Salah definitely.
Solly takes it down, smacks it with the left foot, doesn't he? No problem. Dingra is going to try and take it down, fluff the ball, try and cut back in on his right, and then nothing will happen. Yeah, there's very, very few can do that. That's why a club, Al Nassr or whatever, tried to spend a crap ton of money to get him.
Well, that and a massive amount of publicity in Japan. Cynically.
Well, that is cynical, isn't it?
Cynical? The Saudis? Never.
I don't see them putting 60 million in for Daishi Kamada or whatever from Palace. They could have done that, couldn't they?
No, because he's dog shit. Doom in the chat saying he thinks this has probably saved Hertzler's job for now. Fair play to him. Paul in the chat as well. If we gave Hertzler the patience we gave Potter, he still has a long way to go. 14-game winless streak. I think it was 12 in the end, because we talked about it a little bit more, but still not great. Yeah. And then Stephen in the chat as well, just a matter of interest. Yesterday was actually the first game that I have total confidence that Baleba is an upgrade on Caicedo.
Yeah,
always easy when they play against each other, right? And then Paul again saying his young nephew made his first visit to the Amex yesterday, and seeing his ball control, said Mitoma is like a robot with pillows on his feet.
That is actually a wonderful description.
Fantastic description. Yeah, it really is. Let's talk a little bit about something else that Doom brought up in the chat, because it came up after this penalty shout on João Pedro, which then actually led to a free kick for Chelsea at the other end in immediate succession that I don't think was a free kick either, that almost led to a good chance. So let's talk about that sequence there. João Pedro in the box makes quite a good run. And I think it was it Chalobah that made the challenge? But he essentially just grabs his arm and yanks him back.
Gusto.
What did you make of that? Do you think that was a penalty?
Yeah, I do. And I don't think he gets the decision because he
is João Pedro.
He's a bit floppy. Yeah. I think
do you think VAR overturns that?
No, I think it's one of those ones where the ref gives it, they don't overturn it. If he doesn't give it, they don't overturn it. For me, though, it is a penalty. It is a penalty. But I would have only been furious about it if we'd have gone on and conceded. So the less we have to talk about this BS, the better. Thankfully, it didn't. It didn't cause any massive ramifications. But yeah, I thought it was a penalty. He was pulled down.
Yeah, I totally agree. They immediately launch a counter-attack down the other end. And I think it was Webster makes an excellent clearance/tackle. And, well, it's just a clearance, really. And it was giving us a free kick at the other end, which then led to a half chance, really, more than anything. But, oof, like, imagine that. Going from a penalty at one end to a free kick that should never have been at the other to a goal.
Well, yeah, and going from a goal-scoring opportunity or something where... and then running up the other end of the pitch and the other team scoring, a la Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know about you, but despite the fact that Chelsea had minimal clear-cut opportunities in the second half, I still very much felt like they were going to score. I was very much like they'll score somehow. It'll be some stupid chance and it will go in. That was how I felt. So I was very happy to hear the final whistle. I was very happy that for the most part, the wingers were smart in getting out and just trying to get the ball into the corner as opposed to doing something nonsense. Like they wasted time sensibly. As Paul said, good game management. That was pleasant to see as well. So, and we'll probably talk about him now. Gomez played a part in some of that too. What did you
Every single sub was a good one, I think. We absolutely cited his tactics last week, and we've talked about how good his subs usually are. I think every single one was perfect yesterday.
Yeah, well, we've just talked about the quality that you had on the bench. You brought quality players in.
Always helps, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we know what we've seen out of Ayari. I thought the only one that I raised my eyebrows at was Ayari on for. Well, you could even argue both. Gomez on for Hinchelwood is a more advanced player. Ayari for Baleba is a more attacking-minded player. But they did their jobs nicely. Gomez was, I think, the first little flashes that we'd seen of him beforehand. It's very clear one of those players that needed to get up to the pace of, I know this is the FA Cup, but the pace of the Premier League. And we hadn't really seen much from him. But the more we saw, the more touches he got, the more impressive he started to look. He seemed to be quite calm on the ball, was able to pick out passes, was dogged in his challenges as well. Kind of player that you actually think is probably perfect now to bring on in these kind of game scenarios where you just want a little bit more metal in the middle. And I could very much see when he's back, you take Baleba and Ayari off when needed, and you bring on Weaver and Gomez, and you've got this kind of battling pair of central midfielders that can do a job, but also, well, maybe not Weaver, but Gomez can get forward and make stuff happen at the other end of the pitch as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been sold Gomez as this like flair attacking midfielder, right? Like that's all the scouts, like that's all the reports we've seen. And I think the unfortunate thing is most of us don't watch MLS. So the only thing we have as a reference is a couple of clips from Paraguay. And he very much plays higher up there. But he has his best ratings on Who Scored and FBref at Inter Miami as a centre midfielder. And one of his greatest traits on there, and his only trait that he's considered very strong at, is tackling. This is not a flair, super tricksy, up top kind of out and out central attacking midfielder, is it? Like we've actually signed ourselves a player that is quite happy to get in the middle of the game and graft, because we lost no physicality whatsoever with Hinchelwood going off. He absolutely went in there and went toe-to-toe with Enzo, World Cup winning Enzo, with Moises Caicedo, and won. I think Paul had said in the chat, like, looked like he won every single 50-50 he was a part of.
He did. And you also then brought Matt O'Reilly on a little bit later, right? As I said in our WhatsApp group, Matt O'Reilly feels a bit like the odd man out and immediately came into the game. But it was done in a tactical way, right? Where it took Welbeck off and you pushed João Pedro up so O'Reilly could then sit in the 8/10 role. I think we'll see more of that because you've got an embarrassment of riches in these positions. Between Baleba, Ayari, Hinchelwood, Gomez, O'Reilly, Weaver, geez, that's a lot of lads there, isn't it? But they all give you something slightly different. And that's massive, isn't it? Like the fact that you know what I still think is quite weird. We came into this season talking about how, my God, we've got way too many right wingers. Like 400 people that can play on right wing. Now I'm like, that's one of our weakest spots. And everywhere else seems to be, getting.
But I mean, you talked about odd man out. Like, here's the awkward question: who is the odd man out in that front four? Because yesterday we had Mitoma on the left, Minte on the right, who did well as well, right? Like, he had a good game, like good, nothing special, but good. Mainly because we ended up focusing down that left, and Mitoma decided to have a day. And Ruta obviously kind of almost ran the show from that 10 spot, and Welbs, as you say, brings it all together. Pedro was on the bench though. Does our best starting front four now omit João Pedro? I mean, this is a hell of a problem for Fabian Hertzler to have, right? And this is a player that is fantastic, like without question. Supposedly one of those ones that's almost a dead cert to be gone in the summer to a massive club, and has already been given the armband twice, I believe, to lead this team. What does that optimal front four look like for you? Do we look at putting Ruta out wide like Pedro? Like, what? Tell me what you're thinking, because 5 into 4 don't go, right? And we've got what looked like yesterday a very, very effective front four. Because the odd occasion we did spread it out wide right, they absolutely shit their pants at Minte's pace. And his defensive work is phenomenal, by the way. It's getting better every week, but like, he is really putting in a shift coming back on like, to defend. And he's actually putting in a couple of belting tackles as well. So like, he's showing more and more about himself. And I thought yesterday, just watching him, his delivery is getting better, which is what we all absolutely slated him for. But his delivery is a lot calmer now than it was 6 weeks ago. And he's actually finding targets now. So he's adding to the problems of a selection issue here. So what are your thoughts? We've just talked about 7 different players that can go in that middle two. I mean, we've got a hell of an issue in this front four, haven't we?
Yeah, I don't know how you fix this. If it is something that needs to be fixed, because I cannot envision how you don't start Ruta when he's fit. How can you not start him? Everything he does lately is just turns to gold. I need to see him play football. He needs to play, right? We talked about the importance of Danny Welbeck. You have to play Danny Welbeck if he's fit. So I've got 2 players there. Mitoma has to play if he's fit. So you've got 3 players for me that you do not remove. So you've got one place then, it's the right side. Pedro can't play on the right side. So then do you do what you did against Bournemouth, which is Pedro plays in the 10, Ruta plays on the right, and you get them all in. Now, we won that game with 10 men, but Ruta wasn't very good in that game. He didn't play particularly well on the right-hand side. Pedro was incredible in that game. So it's like, who's your hot hand? I think is what Herzl is going to end up doing. Right now, that is Jorginho Ruta. So I'm wondering whether you're going to see a little bit more time of João Pedro, a bit of spell on the bench, or is Herzl going to say, take it in turns, lads. Jorginho, you started against Chelsea. You're going to sit on the bench against Chelsea on Friday, and João Pedro is going to play, and you're going to come in 60, 70 minutes into the game. Those are his options. By the way, that's without you talking about where does Solly March fit into this whole setup when he's able to come back properly again. Poor Brajan Gruda.
Yep.
Where the hell are you going to go, buddy?
Both of them, Adingra and Gruda, both sat on the bench, right? Like, they're both. I mean, I know we slag off Adingra a little bit because we're having to. Unfortunately, he's living in the shadow of Kaoru Mitoma, which feels harsh. But like, he's a quality winger. He makes the 12 teams in the Premier League better on the left wing if they play Simon Adingra.
Yeah,
I truly believe that. Like, but he's never holding a candle to Kaoru Mitoma, who's like in like that top 3 left wingers in the league, right? So like, he's in this really unfortunate shadow, and he is also just not a natural right winger, despite how many times he was played there last season by force, and on occasion 2 or 3 times this season as well due to injuries. Like, he's all right, but it's not his spot. So it's there's a lot of players there that it's tough for, and it's going to be an interesting lineup come Friday. Obviously, you would expect that Chelsea team not to change a huge amount, but for the Albion, what are your thoughts? What do you see changing from this 11? Do you hope to see pretty much the same thing again because it worked, and just kind of say, you show me what you're going to show your hand first, right? Have Chelsea show their hand first as to what they're doing to change it, and we can react. Or do you bring a couple of changes in for options? Do you bring Iari in for Hinchelwood? Dunk may be a mandated change, so we won't really consider that like a personnel change by tactics, right? It could just be a forceful one, because he's on the bench as well. So, like, what do you think?
Yeah, what do we think? It all depends on some of these injuries, doesn't it? As to what your options are. I don't think I'm changing a lot unless I'm forced to. I really don't, because that worked so nicely, and for at least for decent chunks of it, it worked so nicely. I'm just wondering whether, like I said before, I'm wondering whether he's going to play João Pedro just to mix things up, present them with a slightly different problem. Is Hinchelwood ready for another go around, or are you going to need to maybe give him a rest and you play Baleba and Iari? Potentially. Sounds like Mats Weaver was really close to actually being selected in the squad for this game. So is he going to potentially be on the subs bench? Maybe. I don't think I'd move a lot around. I'll be honest with you. I might. Do I want to drop Minte and see what we can do there? But I don't know who I'd put in necessarily for him. Yeah, I don't think I'm doing a ton.
I mean, Garuda is probably the only one you'd be comfortable putting over there, right?
Well, I don't know if I'm comfortable putting him there either.
No, exactly. Well, no, exactly, because he's looked infinitely better at the 10 as well, which is harsh for him because he's got Pedro and Ruta ahead of him, definitely. So it's a bit of a shit one.
I really don't know. I don't know if I'm doing much there to this. I need to look. What's the injury situation with Purvis?
Not sure. Let's have a look on old Premier injuries and see what the last thing we've got on Purvis' opinion is.
Because that's the only other one, right? If you can make the change, you make that change.
Last thing was on January the 30th, and it just says that they're not available for the Forest game.
Well, that's not a good sign.
Nothing was brought up about him in the last press conference. So, I mean, we'll just have to see this week.
Yeah, and Lanty, as we say, Lanty was excellent. So give him his credit. Maybe he's earned another start there if there's no other options. The only other thing that he could do there if Purvis can't play is you could put Hinchelwood at left back and free up the center. And that allows you to mix things up a little bit. You know, I think going back to what you said, I think you're correct, right? I don't know if you need to blink first. The onus is going to be on Chelsea here to come out and prove themselves. And we should mention here, as good as we were, and the quality of both goals, and the ability for us to soak up pressure, Chelsea was shit. Like, Chelsea were not good. And they've been in very weird form lately. They've been quite unimpressive in large parts of the last couple of months.
Fans are getting on the Maresca out wagon after last night. Big time.
Yeah, look, it's all falling apart, isn't it? I mean, you can really, if you look at their form, it's not been completely uncomparable to ours. And we know how upset we've been with ours. They just lost to us. They just beat Potter's West Ham, right? You lose to Man City. You beat a Wolves team who are fairly unimpressive for the most part. You couldn't beat Bournemouth. Morecambe don't count. You couldn't beat Palace. You lost to Ipswich. You lost to Fulham. You couldn't beat Everton. Like, that's not good. And they looked like a poor team. They did not look like the team we played earlier in the season, who destroyed us.
I mean, I said it in the chat yesterday. It literally looks like it's give it to Cole Palmer, like see what happens. Like
It is, inshallah, yeah.
Yeah, that's their strategy right now. Like it's literally just give it to Cole Palmer and see if we can like squeeze our way through and take a win. Like that's literally how it's going.
You know what's nuts as well is that they've got a couple of players that are out, right? But not massively. Favana's out, right? I think Mudrik's been juicing up.
Has Fofana ever been in for Chelsea? Like he literally signed for Leicester, didn't he? And he like broke a leg or did an ACL or something, and he's like literally never been fit again. It feels like very Solly-esque.
You could compare the benches from yesterday. Compare the benches. I don't know half of the players on the Chelsea bench. A lot of their names begin with A, and I don't know who they are. They joined the Adarabio club. Amugu, Anselmino, Chempong. They brought on Tyreek George. He may as well have been made up. Never seen him before. Ishe Samuel Smith.
I think out of them, I think we've only heard of three. I think I've only heard of three, really. And
one of them played
is
for us.
Obviously Cole Will, yeah. And then Enzo and Madueke. Like I've never heard of any of those.
That's what I mean. Like, and by the way, I tell you what, another nice little narrative that came out of yesterday that was enjoyable. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. Crap.
Yeah, very poor. Desperate for more playing time, but you wouldn't give him it after that, would you?
No, he also doesn't get in our team either, based on what we've just talked about for all the players in those positions. So he's not getting in the team, is he? So that was a wise decision for you, wasn't it, mate? Good things. But compare that to our bench, right? We haven't heard of any of these players. You've got Enzo Fernandez as your only standout, and he's too busy breaking up with his missus and getting back with her. And Madueke's fine. And then we've got Gruder, Adingra, O'Reilly, Pedro, Ayari, Gomez, Webb's like Cashin, all players that, and I know Chelsea fans are probably arguing, be like, "Who's Cashin? We never heard of it." But we have a better bench. It's a better bench. It's Absolutely. A better bench than Chelsea, isn't it? There's no doubt about that. And Gusto was horrendous yesterday, much to the fact that Matoma was so excellent. And Kunku is not a number 9, and doesn't really offer much in the way of threat at all. He's another. They've got the same problem we have in that regard. Nkunku wants to play the 10. He wants to sit in behind like a João Pedro or a Ruta, and they don't have the Danny Welbeck. So they've just got Nkunku that's forced to play in the 9, so Palmer can play in the 10. They're doing what we had to do when Welbeck was injured, and it looks crap. Like, these are the things that you end up, the situations that are bad. And Jadon Sancho's worse than Cairo Mitoma.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Like, we should beat this team. We should beat this team. I want to beat them again.
Yeah, I think we can beat them again next weekend, but you just know we'll get dick 5-0 now because I've said that. It feels like every time I feel any inch of confidence, they just get slapped immediately back down. Who would you like in the cup out of interest for the next round? Just if you could pick, I'll read some names out for you as to those that have qualified. Plymouth and Liverpool are playing as we record, so we don't know who goes through there. Suffice to say, it'll probably be Liverpool. Villa, Tottenham, and Doncaster Palace are yet to play. So those are who knows. I don't think you're going to be saying any of those names anyway. But you've got Manchester United, Millwall, Man City, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Cardiff, Burnley, Preston, Fulham, Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool, one of Villa or Tottenham, probably Palace.
Give me Spurs.
You want
they're so broken. I'll take Spurs. Maybe we can be the ones to get rid of Ange. The Millwall would be my pick.
Millwall at home, absolutely.
One side of my family are all
Preston at home
fans. Millwall season ticket
are they?
Decades. So I would enjoy that one.
That would be a good one.
Yeah.
For you, then that's a great option. I think that would be one of our most winnable, though, just in general. Them and Preston at home. I think they're your two obvious ones that come out. And obviously, if Donny do the business against Palace, then Doncaster at home is even funnier. But
I mean, we're going to get Liverpool, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Feels that way, doesn't it? Unless Plymouth can do the absolute legends job here and put them off. But I mean, it's 0-0 at 48 minutes, so I'm a man full of hope as I record. So
it's going to be 6-0 by the time people are listening to this.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. All right. Anything else you wanted to cover? Obviously, Lamptey won man of the match in the game, like on the TV man of the match bullshit or whatever it is. Do you agree?
No.
Or someone else? For me, I'll let you go first. But I assume you're going to say the same person I was about to.
Yeah, it's Rooter for the most part, or you can have Matoma give it. Whatever, either one of those two.
Rooter for me, clear, and Mitoma a very clear second.
Yeah.
And
then Lamptey very good.
Third as well. I would put him at third. Like, I can't think of anyone else who had a better game than him outside of those two, which is a hell of a comeback for him in a position that's not his main position, and given what he had to cope with last week and what happened to him last week, essentially. Playing against a decent team and basically having to front up Pedro Neto, who is a very good winger.
He's a very talented player. He is. When he's not injured, he's a good player. But I do want to just call out one last time before we finish, is as harsh as we can be to critique Hertzler for his mistakes that he's made, massive mistakes, and some uninspiring football that we've seen. The fact that you can get someone like Tarek Lamptey, credit to Lamptey and to Hertzler, but clearly we've got reports talking about Hertzler sitting down with players, talking through it, like creating the right mentality for this game after the 7-0 defeat. That's a hard job. Right? You look at someone like Tarek Lamptey, you nearly sold him in the transfer window. He's gone out and performed a shocker, our worst defeat in decades and decades and decades, and he was pretty much a big part of that. And then he comes out and wins a man of the match. Was excellent man management.
Yeah, and I mean mental strength from him too, right? Like, there's plenty of players that could have had the best man of managers ever and not come back from that. That could be like a career defining loss last week for some players, right? Like, very good. Very
I'd have been broken. You'd have never seen me on a football pitch again.
It's probably very helpful for Bart, isn't it? Coming away with a win there and not really having to do much after the fact. Like, thank God, like, he didn't have any more opportunities to get screwed, right? Like,
the players all rallied around him when he made that mistake. Did you see that? They were all very, very like, just brush it off. Right.
Yep.
There's clearly, with all the talk about camaraderie and morale falling apart, does seem to be quite a tight-knit group. And you've got players in there like Mitoma and Rooter and Welbeck, personalities where I think you've got really like good people that are able to lift the spirits of some of the other players if there are any issues. So that, I think that was nice to see as well.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a togetherness there, regardless of what else is going on. You don't come back and have a decent performance like that without some, right? You just don't. Yeah. You're not capable of doing that.
But we got to get some league points now, huh? So
yeah, we do. So we will be playing Friday night under the lights instead of a Saturday. Fridays are even worse for traveling down there, so I won't be going. But we will be at home again. Let's run it back. Let's see what they can do. And then after that, it's a pretty massive one away at Southampton. We should be winning that game. We should. Like, I absolutely am confident of saying we should be winning that game.
Has to be a win. Well, we play Bournemouth 3 days later. Is the only issue?
Bournemouth and Fulham, but both at home. So, like,
well,
they're both horrible teams for us to play. But this is the time to turn around that home form, right? Good result again against Chelsea, and then a couple of good ones against Bournemouth and Fulham, and everything changes for me. Everything looks a lot better for the home form there, but it's hard to know, isn't it?
That's where you want this squad, though. This depth that you've got in certain areas of the team, and obviously we're lacking in other parts. But this is where you rotate, where you've got games where you've got Saturday, Tuesday fixtures, and there's a few of those remaining in the season, by the way, at least a couple. That's going to be important. That will be important. But excellent vibes after that. That was such a massive win. Such a massive win.
Especially, as we progress if we progress in the cup, then we'll have even more doubles.
Oh, Plymouth are 1-0 up.
Yep, penalty. absolutely, definitely a handball as well. They're crying about it, but it's absolutely a handball.
God, it'd be so nice to see them go out. Liverpool.
Could you imagine after all of that? Like, I would love to get Plymouth at home. What a time. Not away. There's no way I'd be able to get all the way down to Plymouth. It's like
no one wants that. No.
Well, for people at Brighton, it's not that far. But for me in the Midlands, brutal.
It's still a long way away, though, isn't it? It's still too far.
Yeah, long enough.
It's still too far.
All right. Well, we will be back next weekend to talk Chelsea 3. Like the third one this season. And we will hopefully we'll be talking about a similar result.
Let's do it. Cheers all.
Have a good one.